All right, so today we're doing a deep dive on this Daily Beast article, and it's a really interesting look at how tough campaigning is these days, with
Yeah.
the media and everything.
Yeah, definitely. This whole 24/7 news cycle thing really changes the game, huh? This article, though, it's about Kamala Harris, right?
Exactly. It's about how this, well, it seemed like a pretty standard media appearance, turned into this whole big thing.
I'm guessing it's the one on The View.
You got it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows they don't hold back on that show, right?
Oh, yeah, they always ask the tough questions. And that's where, the article really caught my eye. It talks about how Harris was asked if she would have done anything differently from Biden.
Yeah, and at first she's like, nope, not a single thing. But then later on, she says she'd have at least one Republican in her cabinet.
Whoa, that's kind of a contradiction, don't you think?
Totally. And I feel like that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. It shows just how difficult this balancing act is for politicians, especially during an election.
Absolutely, yeah. They got to show they're 100% behind their running mate, but also try to appeal to voters who, well, let's just say maybe want to see the parties working together a bit more.
Exactly. So it begs the question, was she really changing her mind there on the spot? Or was it part of some big campaign strategy?
Or maybe, and some people are even suggesting this, it was a genuine slip-up.
A gaffe, as they call it.
Yeah.
And you know who jumped on that immediately, right?
Trump, right. He had some pretty harsh words in that article, let me tell you.
It was like he was taking the opportunity to unleash on everyone involved. Especially those comments about the hosts, calling them, uh, well, I don't even know if I should repeat it.
It was rough. Degenerates and dumb women. Like, wow, seriously.
Yeah, and he didn't stop there. He went on to call Vice President Harris, quote, Lion Kamala, and said she is being exposed as a dummy every time she does a show.
It's like he's trying to completely discredit them, and make it so his supporters won't even listen to a word they say, even if it's like completely reasonable.
Exactly. Attack the messenger, not the message. Right.
Oldest trick in the book, unfortunately. But then things took a whole different turn. The article dives into this whole other debate that popped up during Harris's media tour. Something about Hurricane Helene relief funds.
Yeah, this is where it gets really complicated and honestly, kind of sad too. Disaster relief should never be political, but somehow it always ends up that way.
So true. And the article goes into how Trump is claiming that Harris basically took money meant for hurricane victims and used it to house illegal migrants.
Which, for the record, Harris says is totally untrue. She even went as far as to call those accusations irresponsible or callous, saying Trump was using this tragedy to score political points.
So that brings up a big question. How often does this kind of thing happen? These accusations flying back and forth, especially during elections.
It feels like it happens all the time. One side says this, the other side says that, and us regular folks are left trying to figure out who's telling the truth.
And it works, too. You get people doubting everything. They don't know who to trust, which is a shame because it distracts from the real issues.
Exactly. And what's worse, this tactic, it seems to work on a certain group of voters, even if there's like zero proof to back it up.
It's true. And it's scary because once people get it in their heads, it's really hard to change their minds, even if you show them facts. People just believe what they want to believe sometimes.
It's a sobering thought, really, that these kinds of tactics can actually influence how people perceive a situation and even who they hold accountable.
Absolutely. It's not just about political point scoring. It's about shaping public opinion and ultimately voter behavior.
Beyond the controversies, though, this Daily Beast article also sheds light on a broader strategy we're seeing from the vice president. She hasn't limited her media appearances to the usual suspects like 60 Minutes.
You're right. It's been interesting to see her branch out, appearing on platforms like Call Her Daddy and Howard Stern's show.
It's a bold move, for sure. On one hand, it allows her to potentially connect with audiences who might not be tuned into traditional news outlets.
Precisely. It's a way to circumvent the established media landscape and speak directly to specific demographics.
But on the other hand, you have to wonder if there's a risk of alienating more moderate voters who might see those platforms as, shall we say, not serious enough.
That's the gamble, isn't it? Trying to reach new audiences while potentially isolating others. It will be interesting to see how this multi-platform strategy ultimately plays out for her campaign.
Speaking of playing out, the article also reminds us that this dust-up over Vice President Harris's appearance on The View wasn't just a one-off event. There's a history here, specifically between former President Trump and the show's hosts.
Yes, the article mentions his long-standing feud with several of the hosts, especially Rosie O'Donnell and Joy Behar. This tension goes way back, even surfacing during the 2016 presidential debates.
It does feel like we're watching a never-ending political drama unfold, one with very high stakes.
What's particularly interesting here is how this pre-existing baggage adds another layer to the current controversy. It's not simply about what was said in the interview, but also about the long history of animosity between those involved.
Right, we can't forget that Joy Behar, a mainstay on The View, has been openly critical of Trump for years. I believe she even labeled him a true sociopath earlier this year.
Exactly. So this situation highlights how interconnected the personal and the political can be, especially in our current media environment. It's not just about policy disagreements, it's about personalities, long-held grudges, and a whole lot of media spectacle.
It's a tangled web, and it feels like it's only getting more entangled as we head deeper into this election season. Yeah, it can really make your head spin sometimes, trying to make sense of it all, especially when it feels like everyone has an agenda.
You're telling me, it's like, how are you supposed to know what to believe anymore?
Exactly. That's why this whole thing with Harris, it's not just about her, you know? It's about how we respond to these kind of tactics, this whole throwing shade and lobbing accusations back and forth.
It's like, are we really going to let that be the deciding factor in an election?
It really puts the responsibility on us, the voters. We can't just take everything at face value, right?
Yeah. We got to be smarter than that. Question everything. Look for the evidence. All that good stuff.
Think for yourself, basically.
Exactly.
Don't let them do the thinking for you.
Exactly. And that's why we do this deep dive, right? Give people the tools to be informed so they can make their own decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've talked about some pretty wild stuff today, this whole media frenzy, the back and forth, and yeah, those accusations, it's a lot. But at the end of the day, it's up to each of us to cut through the noise, do our homework, and figure out what really matters.
And hopefully we've given you some things to think about, some questions to ask the next time you see one of these stories blowing up on your feed.
Because, hey, being an informed citizen, that's a full-time job these days. But it's one we all got to take seriously, don't you think?
I'm with you 100%. All right, folks, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.